While the Achaeans were arming with Achilles, eager to fight once more, and the Trojans awaited them on the rising of the plain, Zeus commanded Themis to summon the gods to assembly on Mount Olympus. She hastened over heaven and earth to do his bidding, and they all came, even the rivers, except Oceanus, even the nymphs who inhabit the groves and grassy dells and the springs and fountains. They all came to the house of Zeus Cloud-gatherer, and took their seats in the galleries of polished stone which Hephaestus had built for them by his clever art. So there they were assembled in the palace of Zeus. Not even Earth-shaker was deaf to the summons. He also came out of the sea, and as he sat down among them, he wanted to know what Zeus had in mind. "Why have you summoned the gods again to conclave, fiery thunderbolt? Are you a bit anxious about Trojans and Achaeans? Certainly this war is blazing up very close to us now." Zeus Cloud-gatherer answered, "You know what I have in mind, Earth-shaker. You know why I have summoned you. I do care about their killing one another like that. But this is what I want to say. I mean to stay here and sit in a sheltered spot and amuse myself by watching them. The rest of you may go where you like. Join the Trojans or the Achaeans. Help them both just as you fancy. For if Achilles is left alone to fight the Trojans, they will not stand 1 minute before Pelling's pursuing feet. Why, the sight of him was always enough to make them tremble. And now that he is furious for the death of his comrade, I fear he may storm the city, fate or no fate." This was enough to raise war to the death at once. The gods were off to the battlefield on both sides. To the Achaean camp went Hera and Pallas Athena, Poseidon Earth-shaker, Hermes Luck-bringer, the masterpiece of cunning wit. Hephaestus swaggered beside them, hobbling along with his thin shanks moving nimbly. To the Trojans went Ares in his grand helmet, and with him Phoebus with his long hair waving, and Artemis Archeress, Leto and Xanthos and smiling Aphrodite. When Achilles appeared after his long absence, and the Trojans saw him sweep into the field with gleaming armor like a very god of war, their knees trembled beneath them in dismay, and for a long time the Achaeans carried all before them. But as soon as the gods showed themselves, up rose Discord, the mighty harrier of nations. Loud shouted Athena, standing outside the wall on the edge of the moat, or speeding over Callicolone by Simois river. So the blessed gods drove the two hosts together and made the bitter strife burst forth. The father of men and gods thundered terribly from on high. Poseidon made the solid earth quake beneath and the tall summits of the hills. Mount Ida shook from head to foot, and the citadel of Ilios trembled, and the Achaean ships. Fear seized Aidoneus, the lord of the world below. Fear made him leap from his throne and cry aloud lest Poseidon Earth-shaker should break the earth above him, and lay open to every eye those gruesome, danksome abodes which even the gods abhor. So terrible was the noise when gods met gods in battle. For against Lord Poseidon stood Phoebus Apollo with his winged arrows. Against Enyalios glaring Athena stood. Hera was faced by Shutafar's sister Artemis Archeress with her rattling golden shafts. Leto was faced by Luck-bringer Hermes in his strength, and Hephaestus had before him that deep river which the gods call Xanthos but men Scamandros. Achilles longed most of all to meet Hector Priamedes. Hector he sought amid the press. With Hector's blood most of all he longed to glut the greedy god of war. But Apollo sent Aeneas against him. He said to him in Lycaon's voice and shape, "Aeneas, you are a good one to make speeches, but where are those threats you made over the wine when you promised the princes of Troy to fight Achilles Pylades man to man?" Aeneas said, "My dear Priamedes, why do you tell me to tackle that proud man, when you know that is the last thing I want? It wouldn't be the first time I have faced Achilles. Once before he chased me off Ida with his spear, when he had come out for our cattle, the time when he ravaged Lyrnessus and Pedasus. Zeus saved me. Zeus gave me strength and a nimble pair of legs, or I should have gone down before Achilles and Athena. For she was always in front of him to show the light of safety, while she told him to kill Trojans and Lelegians. It's no good for a mere man to fight Achilles. He's always got some god to protect him. and even without that, his cast goes straight and does not stop until it runs through human flesh. But if only God would give me a fair chance, he wouldn't beat me so easily, not if he claims to be made of solid brass." Apollo said, "You should pray to the everlasting gods yourself. You are no mere man. They say Aphrodite was your mother. She is a daughter of Zeus, and Achilles comes from a lower god, just a daughter of the old man of the sea. Go straight for him with the cold steel, and don't let him frighten you with sorry things like curses and threats." These words inspired Aeneas with new courage, and he went in search of his adversary. But Hera saw him. She called her allies to her and said, "Now then, Poseidon and Athena, just consider what we had better do. There is Aeneas in full panoply marching to meet Achilles, and Apollo made him go. Very well, let us turn him back again, or else we must take a hand. One of us might stand by Achilles. He must keep up his strength. He must not lose heart. We will show him that his friends are the best of the immortals, and the others are just windbags, the same who tried to defend the Trojans before. All we Olympians have come into this battle to save Achilles from harm for this day. What will happen afterwards is only what fate spun for him with her thread when he was born. But if Achilles does not learn this from the voice of some god, he will fear when he finds himself face to face with a god. For gods are dangerous when they show their presence openly." Poseidon said to this, "Now, Hera, that's all nonsense. Don't lose your temper. I should not like to make gods fight with one another. Then let us get out of the way to some place where we can sit down and see. Let us leave the matter there. Battle is the men's affair. But if Ares begins it, or Phoebus Apollo, if they get in the way of Achilles and won't let him fight, then we are in it on the spot, hammer and tongs. I think they will soon turn their backs and return to the family in Olympus when once we have them under our compelling hands." He led the way to the high ruins of that ancient wall which the Trojans had built with Athena's help for Heracles, to keep off the sea monster that used to come up and ravage the land. There they sat down, hidden from the world in a thick mist. Ares and Apollo and the rest were on the brows of Callicolone. So the two parties confronted each other, waiting to see what would happen. Neither wished to begin the fray, and Zeus sat on high, commanding in chief. The plain below was crowded with horses and men. The sheen of their armor gleamed bright. The ground rattled and shook under their feet as the two armies met. Charging into the space between, two champions came, Aeneas Anchises and Prince Achilles. Aeneas first stepped out of his car, defiant, the heavy helmet nodding upon his head. He shook the sharp spear and guarded his breast with the shield. Pelides moved forward to meet him, like some wild lion when a crowd of men has come out to destroy him, a whole village. At first he moves unheeding, but as soon as some bold lad casts a lance and wounds him, he crouches down with open jaws. Foam gathers about his teeth. He growls in rage and flogs flanks and ribs with his tail to excite himself, glaring at his foes. Then a leap and a furious charge upon the mass, either to kill or to die. So rage and fury stirred Achilles to meet his enemy face to face. When they were near enough, Achilles first spoke. "Aeneas," he said, "why have you come out so far in front of your lines? Have you a mind to fight with me? Do you hope to make yourself lord of Priam's honor in the midst of his Trojans? Yet even if you kill me, that will not make Priam lay his prerogative in your hand. He has sons, and himself he is firm, no windy-minded man. Can it be that you have a demesne parcelled out for you by the Trojan nation, prime fruitland and cornland, ready for you to live in if you can kill me? That will not be so easy as you think. Why, I made you run with my spear once before. Don't you remember how you were alone with your cattle, and I chased you off the mountains at a racing pace? You did not turn once to look back that day, but you got off clear to Lyrnessus. I was after you, and I sacked the town, thanks be to Athena and Father Zeus. I carried off all the women with my booty, but Zeus and all gods saved you then. I don't think they will save you now, as you imagine. So I advise you to go back to the ranks and not to stand before me, or something may happen to you. When a thing is done and past, even fools are wise at last." Aeneas answered, "Don't think you can scare me with words, Pylades, as if I were a little child. I can use taunts and abuse quite well if I like. We know each other's lineage. We know the names of our fathers, household tales among the children of men. But you have never set eyes on my parents, nor I on yours. Men say the admirable Peleus is your father, and your mother is Thetis, the lovely daughter of the sea. For myself, I am proud to be the son of noble Anchises, and my mother is Aphrodite. One of those two houses will mourn a son this day, for I tell you, childish words will not be enough to part us. But if you care to know more of my lineage, that is no secret. First, Zeus Cloud-gatherer begat Dardanus. He founded Dardania, and lived on the skirts of Ida, among the running brooks, for sacred Iliad was not yet built upon the plain, and there was no city as yet. Dardanus was father of King Erycthonius, the richest man on earth. He had 3,000 mares with young foals at foot, which grazed on the marshy land. Boreas the north wind saw them grazing and was enamored. He took the shape of a blue roan stallion and served some of them. They conceived and dropped 12 foals. These could scamper over a cornfield and never break a stalk, touching only the tops of the ears. They could scamper over the broad back of the sea and touch only the crest of the waves. And Erycthonius begat Tros, king of the Trojans. Tros again had 3 admirable sons, Ilos and Asarchos and Ganymedes, who was the most beautiful of mortal men. He was rapt away by the gods for his beauty, to be cupbearer to Zeus and live among the immortals. Ilos again begat Laomedon, and Laomedon begat Tithonus and Priamos and Lampos and Clytios, and that sprig of Ares Hicetaon. Asarchos begat Capys, and he begat Anchises. I am the son of Anchises, and Hector is the son of Priam. Such is the lineage that I can boast. But courage, Zeus increases that in men or diminishes, according to his will, for he is Lord of all. Now let us stand no more talking like children in the midst of a battle. We could load one another with curses enough to sink a ship as big as a mountain. A rare runner is the tongue, with tales of all sorts in stock, and an infinite crop of words growing all round. Whatever kind of words you speak, such you will hear. But why must we bandy curses like a couple of scolding wives who have some spite gnawing at their hearts, till they run out and scold in the middle of the street, true and false together? The spite brings that in, too. Your words will not turn me away from deeds when I mean battle. Come along now, quickly. Let us each taste what our mettle is like. He let drive his good spear against that dreadful shield. The blade struck with a loud crash. Pylades held the shield well away, for he thought the spear of Aeneas would pierce through. Foolish man! Had he not the sense to know that it is not easy for mortal man to master or escape the glorious gifts of the gods? And so then the good spear of Aeneas did not break the shield. The god-given gold was proof against it. Achilles now cast his spear and struck on the outermost ring, where the metal was thinnest and the hide thinnest behind. The Pelian lancewood ran through with a ringing sound. Aeneas had crouched down, holding up the shield, so the shaft passed over his back and stuck in the ground, still fast in the shield with the 2 layers torn apart. But he had escaped. He stood up dizzy and shaken when he saw that shaft sticking at his elbow. Achilles then drew sword and leaped at him with a shout. Aeneas lifted a great big stone in his hand, such as 2 men could not carry as men go now, but he managed it easily alone. And now Aeneas would have crashed down that stone on his helmet, or on that shield which had saved him before, and Pylades would have chased and killed him with that sword. But Poseidon Earthshaker thought his time was come, and said to the others, "Confound it, I am sorry for that brave Aeneas. He will be killed very soon and go down to Hades because he listened to Apollo shoot afar. What a fool! Apollo won't save him. But why should this poor innocent suffer for someone else's grievances? There's no sense in that, and he always is most generous in his offering to the gods who rule the broad heavens. Come along, let us save him ourselves, or Cronades will be angry if Achilles lays him low. And it is ordained that he shall escape, that the lineage of Dardanos may not perish without seed and disappear. Cronades loved Dardanos more than all the sons he had of mortal mothers. He has already come to hate Priam's family, and now indeed Aeneas shall be king of the Trojans, and his sons' after him. Hera replied, "Settle it as you please, Earthshaker, about Aeneas, whether you will save him or leave him alone. But remember that we two have sworn again and again, I and Pallas Athena, before all the company of heaven, never to stir a finger to help the Trojans, not even when Troy shall be consumed in blazing fire by the victorious Achaeans." So Poseidon left them and passed through the battle to the place where Aeneas and Achilles were face to face. He drew a mist over the eyes of Achilles. He pulled out his spear from the shield of Aeneas and laid it before the other's feet, whisked up Aeneas off the ground, and hurled him through the air. Over the ranks of fighting men Aeneas flew from the god's hand, over the lines of horses, and alighted on the outskirts of battle where the Ciconians were getting ready for action. Poseidon was there by his side, and said at once, "Aeneas, what god tells you to stand up in this mad way against Pelling the Invincible? He is a better man than you are, and more in favor with the gods. Just retreat whenever you see him, unless you want to take lodgings in Hades before your time. But when Achilles meets his death, you may confidently come to the front, for no other Achaean shall kill you." After these plain words he left him, and scattered the mist from the eyes of Achilles, who opened his eyes wide, and said to himself angrily, "Confound it all, here's a miracle done before my eyes. There lies my spear on the ground, and not a trace can I see of the fellow I meant to kill. Aeneas must have some friends in heaven, and I thought his boasting was all stuff and nonsense. Let him go to the devil. He won't have a mind to try me again after this happy escape from death. All right, I will round up our people and have a try for some other Trojans." So he went along the lines, calling out to each man, "Don't wait any longer, my brave Achaeans, but have at 'em man to man. It's too much for me. I may be strong, but I can't tackle the whole army. Not even Ares could do it, and he is a god immortal. Not even Athena could manage the mouth of a battle like this. But as far as my power goes, with hands and feet and strength, I swear I will never pause or rest one instant. Straight through their line I will go, and I don't think the man will be happy who comes within reach of my spear." As he encouraged his men thus, Hector called to the Trojans and told them he was about to meet Achilles. "My brave Trojans," he cried, "have no fear of Pelling. If words were weapons, I could face the immortal gods. But the spear is less easy. The gods are too strong for us. Not even Achilles will bring all his words to pass. Some he will do, some he will cut in the middle. I will meet him face to face, even if his hands are like fire and his spirit like flashing steel." The Trojans heard his rousing appeal. They lifted their spears and moved to meet their foes. Soon the war cry was raised, and the confusion of battle began. Then Apollo appeared by Hector's side and said, "Hector, you must not stand out yet and fight with Achilles alone. Watch him in the throng amid the surging mass, and do not let him cast at you or come close to strike you with the sword." Hector was alarmed by these words and plunged into the melee. But Achilles leapt on the Trojans in fury with terrible shouts. First he got Iphition Otryntiades, the valiant leader of a strong force. A naiad nymph was his mother, and his father Otryntius lived under snowy Tmolus in the rich town of Hyde. He was rushing straight at Achilles when Achilles cut his head clean in two, crying out as he fell, "There you lie, Otryntiades, my terrible foe. Here is your death place. But your birthplace was by the Gygaean lake near your father's demesne, beside fish-giving Hyllus and eddying Hermos." Darkness covered his eyes, and the tires of Achaean wheels tore his body, and over it Achilles brought down that doughty man Demoleon, Antenor's son, stabbing him through helmet and temple. The helmet did not save him, but the blade went through and broke the bone, scattering his brains. Hippodamus next leapt out of his car and tried to escape, but Achilles stabbed him through the back. He died, gasping with a bellowing sound, as a bull bellows when the young men drag him about the altar of Heliconian Poseidon, and Earth-Shaker is glad. Next Achilles went after Polydorus Priamedes. His father would never let him fight because he was youngest of all his sons and dearest. But he beat the world in running, and that day, in his childish vanity, he would come out to show off his paces, until he died for it. He was running by when Achilles hit him on the back, where his belt was fastened with golden clasps and the corselet doubled over. The point came out through his stomach, and he fell on his knees, groaning as he clasped his bowels with his hands. When Hector saw his brother clasping his bowels and sinking to the earth, his eyes grew dim. He could not keep away any longer, but went straight up to Achilles like a flash of fire, balancing his lance. Achilles saw him, sprang to meet him, and cried out in defiance, "Near is the man of all others who has struck me to the heart, the man who killed my precious comrade. Now we need not shirk each other along the lanes of battle." Then he said to Hector, frowning, "Come nearer, that you may die quicker." Hector answered boldly, "Don't think you will scare me with words, Pelides, as if I were a little child. I can use taunts and abuse myself if I like. I know you are a stronger man than I am, but all that lies on the knees of the gods. If I am the weaker man, yet I may take your life with a cast of my spear, for my blade also has a sharp point." He poised and cast his spear, but Athena turned it back from Achilles by a gentle puff of breath, and it fell at Hector's feet. Achilles leapt at him furiously with a shout. Apollo caught him away softly, as a god can do, and hid him in mist. Thrice Achilles leapt at him, thrice the spear struck a cloud of mist. When for a fourth time he would have struck, he cried out angrily with brutal frankness, "Again you have just missed death, you cur! That was a nice thing, but again Apollo saved you. Of course you say your prayers to him whenever you go where spears are whizzing. I dare say I shall finish you next time I meet you, if I can find a god of my own to help me. Meanwhile I will try to find somebody else." Then he pierced the throat of Dryops and left him lying before his feet, as he brought down a big, strong man, Demuchos, Phaletor's son. This man he struck on the knee with a spear cast and finished him off with the sword. He rolled out of a car the two sons of Bias, Laogonos and Dardanos, one with spear and one with sword. Tros, Alastor's son, ran up to clasp his knees. Perhaps he might have mercy and spare a young man like himself. Poor fool, he did not know that man would never listen. No sweet temper was here, no soft heart, but plain madness. Tros clasped the knees. The sword ran under his liver. The liver slipped out. A stream of blood poured over it into his bosom. He fainted. On went Achilles, ran his spear through Mulios, in at one ear, out at the other, cut down through the head of Echeclos with one blow of the sword and warmed it in his blood, ran his spear through Deucalion's elbow where the sinews hold it, the man with arm hanging heavy saw death before him. A sword sliced off his head and sent it flying, helmet and all. He lay with the marrow spurting out of the spine. On went Achilles. Rigmos was the next, the son of Thracian Pyros. A lance caught him in the middle and stuck in the body, rolling him out of his car. The driver turned the horses. A spear stabbed him in the back and rolled him out of the car. The horses ran away. On went Achilles, as a devouring conflagration rages through the valleys of a parched mountain height, and the thick forest blazes, while the wind rolls the flames to all sides in riotous confusion. So he stormed over the field like a fury, driving all before him and killing until the earth was a river of blood. As broad-browed oxen tread the white barley on a threshing floor and quickly crush the husks under their feet, so under Achilles the horses trampled with their feet dead men and broken shields. The axle was soaked with blood, and the handrail of the car was red with spatterings from the horses' hooves and the running wheels. On went Achilles, with spatters of gore upon his invincible hands. Book 21, The Battle by the River. When they came to the ford of Xanthos, Achilles cut the Trojans into two parts. One he drove on to the plain towards the city over the ground where the Achaeans had been routed the day before by the furious assault of Hector. These poured flying before him, but Hera spread a thick mist to baffle them. The other half were crowded into the river. They threw themselves into the rolling eddies with great noise, which echoed along the water and the steep banks. There they were, swimming and tumbling about in the water with shouts and cries. The din and confusion of horses and men in the eddies of the deep roaring river seemed like some great swarm of locusts taking refuge in the water when a sudden fire breaks out. Achilles left his spear on the bank, leaning against a tree, and leapt among them like a fury, sweeping his sword round him, striking right and left. Blows and piteous groans, the river red with blood. The Trojans huddled crouching under the banks of that dreadful river, like shoals of fish scattering into the holes and crannies of some bay before a monstrous dolphin that swallows all he can catch. Achilles cut them down till his arms were tired. Then he picked out a dozen lads alive to be the death prize for Patroclus Menetiades. He dragged them out, bewildered like so many fawns, and tied their hands behind them by their own belts. These he sent back to the camp, and returned to the work of carnage. He met first one of the sons of Priam trying to escape from the river, Lycaon. Achilles had taken him once before on a night raid. The boy was out in his father's park cutting the young shoots of a wild fig tree to make into chariot rails, when Achilles came on him with sudden disaster. That time he sent him across the sea to Lemnos and sold him to Euenos, the son of King Jason, for a fine silver cup. A family friend, Etienne of Imbros, ransomed him for a great price and sent him to Arisbe, but he left that place secretly and got home safe. For 11 days he was happy with his friends after the return from Lemnos, and on the 12th day God let him fall again into the hands of Achilles, who was to send him to Hades, much loath to go. Now he was defenseless, without spear or shield or helmet. He had thrown all that away, sweating and weary, stumbling in his flight. So Achilles knew him at once, and he stood still a while, as he thought angrily to himself, "Damn it, here's a miracle done before my eyes. I shall see next the Trojans I have killed rising up out of their graves. Here's this fellow escaped the day of doom. I sold him into Lemnos. The wide sea keeps back many from the road they would go, but it couldn't keep him. Very well. He shall have a taste of my spear blade. I'll see whether he will come back from that place, too, or if Mother Earth will hold him, as she holds many a strong man." The young man had been trembling and hoping for mercy, and as Achilles lifted the spear, he ran up so that the spear missed his shoulder and stuck in the ground. With one hand he embraced the knees of Achilles. With the other he caught hold of the spear and would not let go as he spoke out his simple prayer. "I beseech you, Achilles, have mercy and spare me. I am as good as a suppliant, noble prince, and the suppliant claims respect. At your table first I broke bread on the day when you took me in the park, when you parted me from father and friends, and sold me into Lemnos for the price of 100 oxen. Now I have been ransomed for thrice as much, and this is the 12th day since I came back to Ilios after much suffering. Now again cruel fate has put me in your hands. I must have offended Father Zeus, that he has given me again to you. Short and sad was my life to be, if my mother had but known it when she brought me forth. My mother, Laothue, the daughter of Actes, the venerable king of the Lelians, in the city of Pedasus upon Satnius. His daughter was Priam's wife, with so many others. She had 2 sons, and you will butcher us both. Already you have killed one in the battle, Polydorus, with that sharp spear. And now, here am I for my death, for I don't think I shall escape your hands, now my bad luck has brought me near you. But listen, sir, this is something you may have forgotten. Don't kill me. I am only half-brother of Hector, who killed your friend, so gentle and so strong." But Achilles was not to be softened, and this was his answer. "Fool, don't talk of ransom to me. Don't make speeches. Before Patroclus met his doom, mercy was rather more to my mind. I took many Trojans alive and sold them. But now not one shall escape death of all that God puts into my hands, not one Trojan of them all, most especially no son of Priam. Come, my friend, die too. Why do you cry like that? Patroclus died too, and he was a much better man than you. Don't you see me, too, a fine big man? My father is a brave man, my mother is a goddess, yet I, too, have death and fate fast upon me. The day shall come, morning or evening or midday, when someone shall take my life, too, in battle, with a thrust of the spear or an arrow from the bow. The young man's knees gave way, his heart failed him. He let go the spear and sank to the ground in a heap, with both hands outspread. Achilles drew the sword from the sheath and thrust it down to the hilt in his neck. He fell flat on the ground, while the blood ran out and sank into the earth. Achilles dragged him away by the leg and threw him into the river, saying with rough plainness, "Lie there now with the fishes, and they will blood-lick your wound without any trouble. No mother shall lay you out and mourn for you, but Scamandros will roll you in his eddies to the broad bosom of the deep. Many a leaping fish will dart up under the black ripples to eat the white fat of Lycaon. Perdition to you all, till we come as far as the citadel of sacred Ilios. You fleeing, I cutting down the rearmost. Not even that river shall help you, the river with his deep stream and silver eddies, the river to whom you have sacrificed so many bulls for so many years and thrown so many horses alive into his eddies. For all that you shall perish miserably until you all shall pay for my friends' blood and the lives of those whom you slew before our ships while I was away from the battle." The river had been growing more and more angry, and he began to consider how he could stop Achilles from his carnage and save the Trojans from destruction. Meanwhile, Achilles had attacked Asteropaeus. He was a son of Pelagon, himself the son of the river Axios and Peribea, the eldest daughter of Achaeamenos. With one leap Achilles was upon him, and the other came out of the river to meet him, holding 2 spears. For Xanthos put courage into him, being angry because of all those men that Achilles had slain in the water without mercy. Achilles called out, "Who are you that dare to come and face me? What is your family? Unhappy are those whose sons face my wrath." Asteropaeus answered, "Do you want to know my family, Pylades? I come from distant Paeonia, at the head of my countrymen. It is now 10 days since I reached Ilios. I trace my lineage from the river Axios, who begat Pelagon, the famous spearman, and they say he is my father. Now then, let us fight, valiant Achilles." Then Achilles lifted his spear, and Asteropaeus threw both spears at once, for both hands were as the right. One struck the shield, but it did not break through, for the god's golden gift held it off. The other grazed his right forearm and drew blood, but it passed on and stuck in the earth, greedy for more. Then Achilles cast at him, but missed the man, and the spear ran into the river bank up to the middle. The other tried to pull it out of the bank. Thrice he shook it, thrice gave up, and then he tried to bend and break it, but Achilles was upon him sword in hand, and cut across his belly so that the bowels gushed out. He fell panting, and darkness covered his eyes. Achilles knelt on his chest and stripped off the armor, crying in triumph, "Lie as you are! It is a hard thing to match yourself against the son of Cronion, even for the son of a river. Yes, you called yourself son of a river, but I can boast descent from almighty Zeus. My father was Peleus, Iacchos' son, king of the Myrmidons, and Iacchos was sprung from Zeus. Then as Zeus is mightier than all the rivers that run into the sea, so the lineage of Zeus is mightier than one river. For look, here is a great river beside you, if he can help at all. But there's no fighting against Zeus. Neither Lord Achilles is match for him, nor all the power of deep-flowing Oceanus, from whom come all the rivers and all the sea. The springs and the deep wells have their source in him. Even he is afraid of the thunder and terrible lightning of almighty Zeus, when he rattles and roars in the sky." As he spoke, he dragged the spear out of the riverbank and left the man dead in the sand where the water soaked him. Eels and fishes attended to him, gnawing and tearing the kidney fat. But Achilles now went after the Paeonians, who were still hurrying away along the river after they saw their chief brought low by the sword of Achilles. There he got Thersilochus and Mydon and Astypulus and Menissos and Thasios and Ineos and Ophelestes. He would have slain even more, but the angry river showed himself in human form and called out from a deep eddy, "O Achilles, you are too strong, your deeds are too violent, for the gods themselves are always your helpers. If Zeus has granted you to destroy the Trojans, drive them out of my stream and do your mischief on the plain. My bed is full of corpses, I am choked with corpses, and I cannot pour my water into the sea. And you go on killing and killing. Let be now, I pray, I am confounded, my lord." Achilles answered, "As you wish, my lord Scamandros, as you say. But I will not cease destroying these Trojans until I can shut them up in their city and try Hector strength to strength, whether I kill him or he kills me." Scamandros thought of Apollo and exclaimed, "Upon my word, Silverbow, you have not done much to keep your divine father's commandments. Didn't he order you strictly to stand by the Trojans and help them until the late evening sets and brings darkness over the fields?" Then Achilles was after the Trojans like a fury. He leapt from the bank into the water. At once the river was on him in a wild flood, surging and tumbling the heap of corpses about, and pushing them up on the dry land and bellowing like a bull. But those who were still alive he kept safe and hid them in his deep eddies. The waters rose in tumultuous billows all around Achilles, beat on his shield, and pushed him so that he could not stand on his feet. He caught hold of a tall elm tree, but the tree tore away its roots and fell from the bank, fell right across the river, and dammed the flood with its branches, so that Achilles scrambled out of the water and went off as fast as he could across the plain, frightened. The river would not stop, but rolled after him, a great black surface. He still hoped to get in the way of Achilles and save the Trojans. But Achilles kept a spear throw ahead, darting like a black hunter-eagle, the strongest and swiftest of birds that fly. His armor brattled and clattered. The river came thundering on behind. He just managed to keep away and ran. As a gardener brings water from a dark burn to his plants and gardens, and shovels out the dams from the channel, leading the water as it tumbles all the pebbles about in the bed and runs quickly on down the slope, almost catching its leader, so the river rolled on after Achilles, and caught him at every step, fleet-footed though he was. But gods are stronger than men, and if he ever stopped those quick feet and showed front to see whether all the gods of the broad heavens were hunting him, a great wave would rise and beat over his shoulders. He would lift up his feet high to get clear, quite distracted. The river tired out his legs with its violent rush, eating the ground from under his feet. Then Pylades looked up to the heavens and groaned, "O Father Zeus, to think not one of the gods has a little pity for me to save me from this river. After that I don't care what happens, but I cannot blame any of the host of heaven so much as my own mother, who cajoled me with falsehoods. She said I should die by one of Apollo's quick shafts under the walls of Troy. I wish Hector had killed me, the best man born and bred in these parts. Then a brave man would have killed, and a brave man would have died. But now my fate is to die an ignominious death, caught in this river like a boy from the pigsty who tries to cross a torrent in winter and drowns." As he spoke the words, Poseidon and Athena stood by his side in the shape of two men, gripping his hand and encouraging him. Poseidon said, "Don't shrink like that, Pylades. Don't be afraid. Here are two gods to help you with full consent of Zeus, I and Pallas Athena. It is not your fate to be swallowed up by a river. The river will soon give over. You know it without being told. But now we will give you a piece of good advice if you will listen. Fight away until the Trojans are shut up in their city, all that are left. But you come back to the ships as soon as you have killed Hector. We promise you victory." Achilles was much encouraged by this advice, and he pushed across the plain. The whole space was covered with water, all sorts of fine armor and weapons floating upon it, and the bodies of young men cut off in their prime. He stumbled along, wading through these, and lifting his knees high to make way against the running current. Athena gave him strength enough to hold his own. But Scamandros was angrier than ever against Achilles. He lifted a great crested wave on high, and called loudly to Simois, "I say, brother, this man's too strong. Let us both join to stop him, or he'll drive the Trojans before him and sack the city. Help, here, quick! Fill up your stream from the springs, bring down all your torrents, raise a flood, roll among trees and stones in confusion. We must stop this wild man who thinks himself as good as any god and sweeps the field. I vow his strength shall do him no good, nor his handsome body, nor his fine armor, which will soon lie at the bottom, I think, buried in mud. I'll slime him over in sand, and roll a mountain of shingle on the top. His friends shall not know how to find his bones in all that slough. Here shall be his sepulchre. There will be no need to pile a barrow when the Achaeans make his funeral." Then the river rose in a mighty, towering wave, roaring and swirling with a confused agglomeration of foam and blood and bodies, curving over the head of Achilles, and there he would have caught him. But Hera saw the danger, and called to Hephaestus, "Up with you, Crookshank, my son. You were to mark River Xanthos as we arranged. Go and help the man. Be quick. Raise a conflagration, and I will bring west and southeast with a heavy gale from the sea to drive the flames and burn up the bodies and armor together. You burn the trees along the banks and invade the river. Don't let him move you by prayers or by curses, and don't stop until you hear me calling and telling you to stop." Hephaestus at once raised a devil of a fire. The conflagration first swept the plain and burned up all the heaps of bodies which Achilles had left there. As the wind blows in autumn on an orchard newly watered and dries it, and the harvester is glad, so the fire dried the water off the plain and consumed all the bodies. Then he turned his flames to the river itself, burnt elms and willows and tamarisks, burnt clover and rushes and galingale and everything that grew along the banks. Eels and fishes dived and darted about in great distress, as Hephaestus directed his fiery blast on the water. The river was burnt himself, and called out, "Hephaestus! No god alive can stand against you, and how could I fight you all ablaze with fire like that? Make up the quarrel. Let Achilles drive the Trojans out of their city and have done with it. What are quarrels and succors to me?" He was well in the fire as he spoke, and his water was bubbling like a copper full of hog's fat melting over a brisk blaze, with faggots of good dry wood piled all round. The water boiled, and he did not care to run any more while the fiery blast of Hephaestus tormented him. So he appealed to Hera frankly. "My dear Hera, why has your son pitched on my stream? Why trouble me out of so many others? You can't blame me more than the others who helped the Trojans. Well, I will promise to stop if you say so, but let him stop too. I give you my oath I will never help Trojans again, not even when the Achaeans fire the city and burn the whole place up in the conflagration." At once Hera called out, "Stop, Hephaestus, my admirable son. It is not proper to knock about an immortal god like this for the sake of mortal men." At the word, Hephaestus quenched his furious fires, and the river ran down between his banks as before. So Hera stayed that quarrel when Xanthos was pacified, although she was still angry, but the other gods were bitter against each other on the opposing sides. They soon fell to it with a great din, until the wide earth rang again and the high heavens trumpeted. Zeus heard the noise, sitting on Mount Ida. His heart laughed with glee to see God meeting God in battle. Shield-piercing Ares began, with a leap at Athena, spear in hand, shouting insults as he came. "Why do you pit gods against gods again, you dog-fly, with that bold audacity of yours, that furious temper? Don't you remember how you let loose Diomedes Tydides to wound me? How you caught that spear in the sight of all and sent it straight at me and tore my beautiful flesh? You will pay now for what you did then, I think." With this threat he lunged his spear against the tasseled Aegis cape, that terrible cape which is proof against the thunderbolt of Zeus. Athena stepped back and picked up a great stone that stood in the ground, black and rough, an ancient landmark, and threw it and hit Ares on the neck. He collapsed and fell in his rattling armor, dabbing his hair in the dust. 7 roods of land his great body covered. Pallas Athena, triumphant, told him her mind in plain words. "You silly fool! Do you think yourself a match for me? You have not found out yet how much stronger I am than you. That may satisfy your mother's curses for deserting the Achaeans and taking the Trojan side. She is angry, I can tell you." So saying, she turned her eyes away. Aphrodite caught him by the hand and helped him up, groaning heavily and still half-dazed. But Hera saw this and called out to Athena, "Look at that Atritone! Look, you daughter of almighty Zeus, here's this dog-fly, again leading the pest of all mankind out of the battle. After her!" Athena was after her with joy, rushed at her and gave her a push on the breast with her open hand, which brought them both down in a heap. Then she told the pair what she thought of them. "I wish all those who help the Trojans were like these when they meet the Achaeans in battle. As bold and as hearty as Aphrodite when she confronted me to help her Ares. Then we should long ago have made an end of this war, and we should have sacked the tall fortress of Troy." Hera smiled. My Lord Earthshaker was facing Apollo, and he spoke next. "Phoebus, why are we two? The others have begun, and we ought to do some. It would be a disgrace to return to that brazen house on Olympus without a battle. You begin. You are the younger, and it would hardly be fair for an older god of more experience like me." "You silly fool. There's not much sense in your head. Do you forget what we two had to suffer at Ilios all by ourselves when Zeus sent us to serve Laomedon for 1 year at a fixed wage, when he was master and gave us orders? My job was to build a fine broad wall on the city to make it invincible. Yours, Phoebus, was to tend the cattle on the foothills of Ida. But when payday came, happy day, that terrible man robbed us of all our pay, told us to go, threatened to tie us up, hand and foot, and sell us somewhere along the island, far away, said he would lop off both our ears. So we came back disappointed without our pay. He promised, you see, and did not pay up. That's the man whose people you are obliging so kindly. Instead of joining us and doing your best to destroy them, out and out, women and children and all." Apollo answered, "Look here, Earthshaker, you could not call me a sane god if I were really to fight you for the sake of mortal men. Poor things, they are like the leaves of the forest, you know. Grow up full of fire and eat the kindly fruits of the earth, then wither away and perish. Come along, let the others fight, and we will keep out of it." So he turned away, for he felt shy of coming to blows with his own father's brother. But his sister, the wild beasts lady, Artemis Huntress, scolded him roundly in no flattering words. "So, you run away, Shootaphar. You let Poseidon have all the honors and give him victory for nothing? Silly fool. What is your bow for? A wind bow, useless. Don't let me hear you boasting again in our father's hall before all the family how you will stand up to Poseidon and fight him." Apollo made no answer to this, but Hera did, and she scolded the archeress roundly. "How can you dare to put yourself against me, you bold bitch? You will find it hard to face my wrath, in spite of the bow you carry, for women are your prey. Zeus has made you a lion among the women, and lets you kill any you like. You had better go and show your prowess in the mountains by killing savage beasts and wild deer, and leave your betters alone. But if you want to learn the art of war, I'll show you I am the stronger when you set up yourself against me." She grasped both the other's wrists in her own left hand, and with her right pulled the quiver off her shoulders and beat it about her ears, smiling at her twists and wriggles, while the arrows fell out in a shower. Artemis was in tears by this time, and she managed to slip away underneath. She was off like a dove chased by a falcon into a cleft of the rocks where she escaped for once by good fortune. So Artemis escaped weeping and left the arrows on the ground. Hermes said to his antagonist, "I won't fight with you, Leto. It's dangerous to bandy fisticuffs with the wives of Zeus, cloud-gatherer. You are heartily welcome to boast before the whole family that you beat me by force of arms." Leto just picked up her daughter's arrows lying about in the dust higgledy-piggledy and went away. Artemis, however, got as far as the great hall of Zeus and threw herself on her father's knees, weeping, while her soft robe quivered and shook. Her father clasped her close to him and asked, laughing gently, "My dear child, who in the heavens has treated you like this?" She answered, "Your own wife slapped me, father, with her pretty white hands. Your wife, Hera, who began all this quarreling and fighting in our family." While all this was going on, Phoebus Apollo entered the city of Iliad. He was anxious about the place and feared the Danaans might take it that very day before its time. The other gods had gone home, some resentful, some triumphant, to their places beside their father, the thundercloud. But Achilles was dealing death on men and horses alike, carrying with him devastation and woe, as when smoke rises to heaven over a burning city after the wrath of God has brought upon it devastation and woe. But old King Priam was standing on the wall when he suddenly saw Achilles, like some monstrous portent, sweeping the Trojans before him in rout, and there was no help. Groaning aloud, he came down from the wall and called to the keepers of the gate as he went along, "Open the gates wide and hold them in hand until our people come in. They are flying before Achilles, and here he is close at hand, driving them on. I think this will be a bad business. But as soon as they are all safe inside, close the gates fast at once, for I fear that man of destruction may make a dash to get in too." They ran back the bolts and pushed back the gates, now the one hope of safety, and Apollo leapt out to meet them, that he might save the Trojans from destruction. Straight to the lofty walls they ran, parched with thirst, smothered in dust. Close behind Achilles plied his spear, his heart possessed with madness and the lust of victory. Then the Achaeans would have taken Troy, but for Phoebus Apollo. There was a brave man there, Aegina, the stalwart son of Antenor, and Apollo strengthened his heart with courage, and himself stood by him, leaning against the oak, but hidden in mist, to keep from him the heavy hands of death. This man, when he saw Achilles coming, stood still in great perplexity of mind, and deeply moved, he said to his own brave heart, "Here is trouble for me. If I run before Achilles along with this terrified crowd, he will catch me all the same and cut my coward's throat. If I let the crowd go on in their route before Achilles, and use my feet to escape somewhere else in the plain, I may get into the foothills of Ida and hide under the bushes. Then I may cool off my sweat in the river and come back to Ilios in the evening. But what's the use of thinking such things? Suppose he notices me taking myself off towards the plain, runs after me, and catches me with those quick feet of his. Then there will be no escape from death, for he is stronger than any man alive. What if I stand up to him where I am? The man's flesh can be cut, I suppose. He has no more than one life. They say he's mortal, and Zeus Cronades gives the victory." With these thoughts he pulled himself together to await Achilles, firmly resolved to fight for it. He was like some panther in the thick bush before the huntsman, which fears not and flees not when she hears the baying of the hounds. Even if the man gets in first with a stab or a shot, though pierced with a spear, she loses no courage until she grapple or die. So this man, Aegina, the brave son of a doughty sire, would not think of flight before he could try Achilles. He held the shield ready before him and shouted aloud, "I suppose you hope, Achilles, this day to take the city of Troy. Silly fool! Much pain yet remains to be suffered for Troy. There are many men within, and strong men, and we stand before our wives and children to defend our fortress. You shall meet your fate here, terrible and bold though you are." Then he aimed the spear and let fly. The blade struck just under the knee with a loud clang, but it glanced off the tin of the shin guard without piercing the god's masterpiece. Achilles was following up, when Apollo carried off the man in a mist and sent him in peace out of the battle. Then he kept Achilles away from the battlefield by a trick. Achilles saw Aegina, as he thought, standing before his feet, and rushed after him, chased him over the plain, turned him towards the river Scamandros, always just a little behind. But that was Apollo's trick, so that Achilles always expected to catch him at the next step. Meanwhile, the mob of routed Trojans managed to get behind the walls until the place was full of them, and glad they were to get there. They had not spirit left in them to wait for one another and see who was dead and who was alive. They simply poured into the city, all whose legs were quick enough to save them. Book 22 of the Last Fight and the Death of Hector. Now the routed men were huddled together in the city like a lot of trembling fawns. And while they cooled off their sweat and drank to assuage their thirst, leaning upon the battlements, the Achaeans came near to the walls and formed up with their shields against their shoulders. But Hector stayed where he was, in front of the Scaean gates, for the shackles of fate held him fast. Then Apollo made himself known to the pursuing Achilles. "Why are you chasing me, Pylades?" he said. "Mortal man chasing immortal god. You never knew that I was a god. I see. You are still as wild as ever. You routed the Trojans, and now you care nothing about them. Just look, they are all collected in the city, and you have wandered away here. You will not kill me, for death cannot come near me." Achilles answered angrily, "You have baffled me, Shooter-far. Cruel god, to draw me here away from the walls. Many more should have bit the dust before I reached Ilios. Now you have saved their lives and robbed me of my victory. Easy enough, since you have no vengeance to fear. I would certainly have my revenge if I had the power." Then he was gone in his angry pride, like a prize racehorse with a car behind him that gallops over the plain, straining every muscle. The old King Priam was the first to see him speeding over the plain. His armor shone on his breast, like the star of harvest whose rays are most bright among many stars in the murky night. They call it Orion's dog. Most brilliant is that star, but he is a sign of trouble, and brings many fevers for unhappy mankind. The old man groaned, and, lifting up his hands, beat them upon his head as he groaned, and cried aloud to his son, entreating him. But his son was standing before the gates, immovable, and determined to meet Achilles face to face. "Oh, Hector!" the old man cried in piteous tones as he stretched out his hands. "Hector, my beloved son, do not face that man alone, without a friend, or fate will soon find you out. Do not be so hard-hearted. Pelling will destroy you, for he is stronger than you are. Oh, that the gods loved him as I do. Soon would vultures and dogs feast on him lying on the ground. Then this cruel pain would pass from my heart. He has bereaved me of many sons and good sons, killing and selling to far-off islands. Now again there are 2 sons that I cannot see amongst those who are crowded here in the city, Lycaon and Polydorus. Their mother was the Princess Laothoe. If they are alive in the enemy camp, they shall be ransomed. There is gold and bronze enough here, for she had plenty from her old father Altes. If they are dead already and in the house of Hades, there is grief for their mother and for me, their father. But for the rest of the people the grief will not last so long, if only you do not die with them by the hands of Achilles. Do come within these walls, my son. Save the men and women of our city. Life is sweet. Do not let Achilles rob you of life and win glory for himself. Pity me also, an old man, but not too old to know, not too old to be unhappy. A miserable portion indeed, Father Cronides will give me then, to perish in my old age, after I have lived to see many troubles, seen my sons destroyed and my daughters dragged into slavery. My house ransacked, little children dashed on the ground in fury, my sons' wives dragged away by Achaean hands, and myself last of all. Someone shall strike me down or pierce my body and leave me dead at my door for carrion dogs to devour. My own table dogs, my watch dogs, which I have fed with my own hands, will go mad and lap my blood and lie sated by the door where they used to watch. For a young man, all is decent when he is killed in battle. He may be mangled with wounds. All is honorable in his death, whatever may come. But a hoary head and a white beard, and nakedness violated by dogs when an old man is killed, there is the most pitiable sight that mortal eyes can see. As the old man spoke, he tore the white hairs from his head. But Hector would not listen. His mother stood there also, weeping. She loosened the folds of her dress, and with the other hand bared her breast, and through her tears cried out the secrets of her heart. "Oh, Hector, my own child, by this I beseech you, have pity on me, if ever I gave you the soothing breast. Remember this, my love, and come behind these walls. Let these walls keep off that terrible man. Do not stand out in front against him. Do not be so hard. For if he kill you, never shall I lay you on your bier. Never shall I mourn over you, my pretty bud, son of my own body, nor your precious wife. We shall both be far away, and Danaan dogs will devour you in the Danaan camp." But their tears and their prayers availed nothing with Hector's proud spirit. He stood fast and awaited the coming of his tremendous foe. Like a serpent of the mountains over his hole, fed full of poisons and imbued with bitter hate, who lies in wait, coiled about the hole and fiercely glaring, so Hector, imbued with unquenchable passion, would not retreat, but stood leaning his shield against a bastion of the wall. Then, deeply moved, he spoke to his own heart. "What shall I do? If I retreat behind these walls, Polydamas will be the first to heap reproaches on me, for he advised me to lead the army back to the city on that dread night when Achilles rose up. I would not listen. It would have been better if I had. And now that I have ruined them all by my rashness, I am ashamed to face the men and women of Troy. Or some base fellows may say, Hector thought too much of his own strength and ruined us all. They will say that, and my better part is to face him for life and death. Either I shall kill him and return in triumph, or I shall die with honor before the gate. Shall I lay down my shield and helmet and lean my spear against the wall and go to meet him alone, and promise to yield Helen with all her wealth, all that Alexandros brought with her to Troy? Yield the woman who was the cause of the great war, let the princes of Argos take her away, offer to pay besides half the treasure of our city, make the elders of the city take oath to hide nothing, but to divide honestly all we possess. But what good would that be? Suppose I should approach him, and then he would have pity and would not spare me. Suppose I should strip off my armor, and then he should just kill me naked like a woman. This is no place for fairy tales or lovers' pretty prattle, the way of a man with a maid when a man and maid prattle so prettily together. Better get to work at once. We'll see which of us the Olympian makes the winner." So he mused and stood his ground, while Achilles drew near like Enyalios, the warrior god, shaking over his right shoulder that terrible Pelian ash plant. The armor upon him shone like flaming fire or beams of the rising sun. Hector trembled to see him. He could stand no longer, but took to flight, and Pelides was upon him with a leap. Hector fled swiftly under the walls of Troy, and Pelides flew after him furiously, as a falcon swoops without effort after a timid dove, for he is the swiftest of flying things, and he darts upon her with shrieking cries close behind, greedy for a kill. They passed the lookout and the wind-beaten fig tree, keeping ever away from the wall along the cart road, until they reached the two fountains which are the sources of eddying Scamandros. One is a spring of hot water with steam rising above it as if it were boiling over a fire. One even in summer, as cold as hail or snow or frozen ice. Near these are the tanks of stone where the Trojan women and girls used to wash their linen in peacetime, before the Achaeans came. So far they came in their race, fleeing and pursuing, a strong man fleeing, and a far stronger in pursuit. They ran hard, for Hector's life was the prize of this race. Not such prizes as men run for, a beast or an ox-hide shield. Thrice round the city of Priam they ran, like champion racehorses running round the turning post for a tripod or a woman or some great stake, when a man is dead and the games are given in his honor. All the gods were watching, and the father of gods and men exclaimed, "Confound it, I love that man whom I see hunted round those walls. I am deeply grieved for Hector, who has sacrificed many an ox on the heights of Ida or the citadel of Troy. And now there is Prince Achilles chasing him round the city of Priam. What do you think, gods? Just consider, shall we save him from death, or shall we let Achilles beat him now? He is a brave man." Athena, bright eyes, replied, "Oh, Father Flashing Bolt, oh, Thundercloud, you must never say that. A mortal man long doomed by fate, and you will save him from death? Do as you please, but the rest of us cannot approve." Zeus, Cloud-gatherer, answered, "Never mind, Tritogeneia, my love. I did not really mean it, and I want to be kind to you. Wait no longer, but do what you wish." Athena was ready enough, and shot away down the slopes of Olympus. Achilles was now following at full speed, and gave Hector no chance. He watched him like a hound which has put up a hart from his lair, and gives chase through the dingles and the dells. Let the hart hide and crouch in the brake, the hound tracks him out till he finds. If Hector, going by the road, made a dash at the city gates for refuge, hoping his friends might help him with a volley from the walls above, Achilles would take a short cut and get before him, running under the walls and turning him back towards the open ground. It was like some race in a dream, where one chases another and he cannot catch, nor the other escape. So Achilles could never catch Hector, or Hector escape Achilles. How indeed could Hector have escaped his fleet pursuer so far, if Apollo had not then, for the last time, been near to give him strength and speed? And Achilles had signaled to his own men that no one should let fly a shot at Hector, and take his own credit away if he came in second. But when the fourth time they drew near the two fountains, see now, the father laid out his golden scales and placed in them two fates of death, one for Achilles and one for Hector. He grasped the balance and lifted it. Hector's doom sank down to Hades, and Apollo left him. At that moment Athena was by the side of Achilles, and she said in plain words, "Now you and I will win, my splendid Achilles. Now I hope we shall bring great glory to our camp before the Achaean nation, by destroying Hector for all his insatiable courage. Now there is no chance that he can escape, not if Apollo shoot afar should fume and fret and roll over and over on the ground before Zeus Almighty. Rest and take breath, and I will go and persuade the man to stand up to you." Achilles was glad of a rest, and stood still, leaning on his barbed ash plant. Athena now took the form and voice of Deiphobus. She went over to Hector and said to him simply, "Achilles is giving you a hard time, old fellow, chasing you like this round the city. Let us stand and defend ourselves." Hector answered, "Oh, Deiphobus, I always liked you best of all the sons of my father and mother, but now I shall think more of you than ever for daring to come outside for my sake when you saw me here. All the rest keep inside." Athena said, "My dear old fellow, father and mother and all our friends begged and besought me to stay. They are so terribly afraid of him, but I had not the heart to desert you. Now then, let us have at him. No sparing of spears. Let us see whether he will kill us both and carry off our blood-stained spoils, or if your spear shall bring him down." So the deceiver led him towards Achilles. And when they were near him, Hector spoke. "I will fly from you no more, Pelides. 3 times I raced round the city of Priam, and would not await your attack. But now my heart bids me stand and face you, for death or for life. But first come near, and let us give our troth. The gods shall be the best witnesses and sentinels of our agreement. If Zeus gives me endurance, and if I take your life, I will do no vile outrage to your body. I will take your armor, Achilles, and your body I will give back to your people. You do the same." Achilles answered with a frowning face, "Hector, I cannot forget. Talk not to me of bargains. Lions and men make no truce. Wolves and lambs have no friendship. They hate each other forever. So there can be no love between you and me, and there shall be no truce for us until one of the two shall fall and glut Ares with his blood. Call up all your manhood. Now you surely need to be a spearman and a bold man of war. There is no chance of escape now. This moment Pallas Athena shall bring you low by my spear. Now in one lump sum you shall pay for all my companions whom you have slain and I have mourned." With the words he poised and cast his long spear. But Hector saw it coming and crouched down so that it flew over and stuck in the earth. Pallas Athena pulled it out and gave it back to Achilles, but Hector saw nothing. Then Hector said, "Amiss? I am not dead yet, as you thought, most magnificent Achilles. So there was something Zeus did not tell you about me, as it seems. You are only a rattle-tongue with a trick of words, trying to frighten me and make me lose heart. I am not going to run and let you pierce my back. I will charge you straight, and then you may strike me in the breast if it be God's will. But first see if you avoid my spear. I pray that you may take it all into your body. The war will be lighter for Troy if you are dead, for you are our greatest danger." He poised his spear and cast it, and hit the shield fair in the middle. But the spear rebounded and fell away. Hector was troubled that the cast had failed. He had no second spear, and he stood discomfited. Then he shouted to Deiphobus and called for another. But no Deiphobus was there. Now Hector knew the truth, and cried out, "All is lost! It is true, then, the gods have summoned me to death. Deiphobus was by my side, I thought. But he is in the city, and I have been deceived by Athena. Now then, death is near me. There can be no delay. There is no escape. All this while such must have been the pleasure of Zeus and his son Shutafar, who have kindly protected me so far. But now fate is upon me. Yet I pray that I may die not without a blow, not inglorious. First may I do some notable thing that shall be remembered in generations to come." With these words he drew the sword that hung by his side, sharp and strong, gathered himself, and sprang like an eagle flying high and swooping down from the clouds upon a lamb or cowering hare. Achilles moved to meet him, full of fury, covering his chest with the resplendent shield, while the thick golden plumes nodded upon his flashing helmet. His right hand held poised the great spear, which gleamed like the finest of all the stars of heaven, the star of evening, brilliant in the dark night. He scanned Hector with ruthless heart to see where the white flesh gave the best opening for a blow. Hector was well covered with that splendid armor which he had stripped from Patroclus, but an opening showed where the collarbones joined the neck to the shoulder, the gullet where a blow brings quickest death. There Achilles aimed, and the point went through the soft neck, but it did not cut the windpipe, and Hector could still answer his foe. He fell in the dust, and Achilles cried in triumph, "There, Hector! You thought no doubt while you were stripping Patroclus that you would be safe. You cared nothing for me far away. Fool! There was an avenger, a stronger man than Patroclus, waiting far away. I was there behind in the camp, and I have brought you low. Now you shall be mauled by vultures and dogs, and he shall be buried by a mourning nation." Hector, half fainting, answered, "I beseech you by your soul and by your knees, by your father and your mother, do not leave me for dogs to mangle among your ships. Accept a ransom. My father and my mother will provide gold and treasure enough, and let them carry home my body, that my people may give me the fire which is the rightful due of the dead." Achilles said with an angry, frowning face, "Knee me no knees, you cur, and father me no fathers. No man living shall keep the dogs from your head, not if they bring ransom 10 times and 20 times innumerable, and weigh it out and promise more. Not if Priamus Dardanides pay your weight in gold. Not for that ransom shall your mother lay you out on the bier and mourn for the son of her womb. But carrion dogs and carrion birds shall devour you up. For what you have done to me, I wish from the bottom of my heart that I could cut you to pieces and eat you raw myself." Hector answered him, dying, "I know you well, and I forebode what will be. I was not likely to persuade you, for your heart is made of iron. But reflect, or I may bring God's wrath upon you on that day when Paris and Phoebus Apollo shall slay you by the Scaean gates, although you are strong." As he spoke, the shadow of death encompassed him, and his soul left the body and went down to Hades, bewailing his fate, bidding a last farewell to manhood and lusty strength. Hector was dead. Even so, Achilles again spoke. "There, dead. My fate I will accept, whenever it is the will of Zeus and all gods to fulfill it." He drew the spear out of the body and laid it aside. Then he stripped off the armor, and the other Achaeans came crowding round. How they gazed in wonder at Hector's noble form and looks. Yet no one came near without a stab. They beat him and stabbed him, saying to each other, "Ha ha! Hector feels very much softer now than when he burnt our ships with his blazing brand." Achilles, when he finished stripping the spoils, turned to the crowd and made them a speech in his downright manner. "My friends," he said, "princes and captains of the nation, since, as you see, the gods have granted me to kill this man who has done us more damage than all the rest put together, let us go round the city ready for battle and find out what they mean to do, whether they will leave their fortress now this man is dead, or whether they will still confront us, although they have no Hector." "But stay, what am I thinking about? Patroclus lies beside our ship, unmourned, unburied. Patroclus I can never forget so long as I live and move. And even if in the house of Hades men forget their dead, yet I will remember my dear comrade even there. Come on, my lads, let us march back to our ship, singing our hymn of victory, and bring this man with us. We have won a great triumph. We have killed Hector, to whom the Trojans prayed as if he were a god." And then he thought of a shameful outrage. He cut behind the sinews of both Hector's feet from ankle to heel, and strapped them together with leather thongs, and fastened them to his chariot, leaving the head to drag. Then he laid the armor in the car and got in himself, and whipped up the horses. Away they flew, the dust rose. As the body was dragged along, the dark hair spread abroad. There, in the dirt, trailed the head that was once so charming, which now Zeus gave to his enemies to maltreat in his own native land. And as the head was bedabbled thus in the mire, his mother tore her hair and threw away the covering veil, and wailed aloud, seeing her son. His father lamented sore, the people wailed, and lamentation filled the city. Such lamentation there might have been if all frowning Ilios were smoldering in ashes. The people had much ado to keep the old king in his frenzy from rushing out of the Dardanian gates. He rolled in the dung-heap and appealed to all, naming each by his name. "Have done, my friends. I know you love me, but let me go out alone and visit the Achaean camp. Let me pray to this terrible, violent man. He may have shame before his fellows and pity an old man. Yes, I think he has an old father like me, Peleus, who begat him and bred him to be the ruin of Troy. And for me, more than all, he has brought trouble. So many of my sons he has killed in their prime. I mourn for them, but not for them all so much as one who will bring me down with sorrow to the grave. My Hector. Would that he had died in my arms. Then we could have mourned and wept till we could weep no more, the unhappy mother who bore him, and I, his father." As he spoke he wept, and the people lamented with him. Then Hecabe led the women's lamentation herself, weeping the while. "My child, I am desolate. How shall I live in sorrow when you are dead? Night and day you were my boast in the city, and a blessing to all, both men and women, who used to welcome you as one divine. Truly you were a great glory to them also while you lived. But now death and fate has come upon you." But Hector's wife had not yet heard anything of her husband. No messenger had told her the truth, that he remained outside the gate. She was busy with her loom in a far corner of the house, embroidering pretty flowers on a wide purple web. She called to the servants to put a cauldron to boil on the fire, that Hector might have a warm bath when he came in from the battle. Poor creature! She knew not that he was far away from all baths, brought low by the hands of Achilles and the will of bright-eyes Athena. But when she heard lamentation and wailing from the wall, her limbs quivered, and the shuttle fell to the ground out of her hand, and she called to her maids, "Here, come with me, two of you, and let me see what has happened." That was the voice of my honored good mother. "My heart is in my mouth, my knees are turned to stone. Some trouble is at hand for the sons of Priam. Far from my ear be that word, but I am terribly afraid Prince Achilles has cut off my rash Hector by himself and driven him away to the plain. Ah, he will put an end to the fatal pride that always possessed him, for Hector would never stay in the crowd. He would always run out in front and yield in courage to no man." She tore out like a mad woman, with beating heart, and the maids followed. When she came to the crowd of men on the battlement, she stood peering about. Then she saw him, dragged along in front of the city. The horses were dragging him at full speed toward the Achaean camp, careless what they did. Then the darkness of night came over her eyes, and she fell backwards, fainting and gasping. The coverings fell from her head, diadem, coif, braided circlet, and the veil which golden Aphrodite had given her on the day when Hector paid his rich bride gifts and led her away from Eetion's house. Crowded round her were Hector's sisters and good sisters, holding her up, distracted unto death. When she came to herself and revived, she cried out amid her sobs, "O Hector, I am unhappy. So we were both born to one fate, you in Troy in the palace of Priam, I in Thebe under woody Placos in the house of Eetion, who brought me up as a tiny tot. Doomed, father, doomed, child. Would I had never been born. Now you have gone to the house of Hades, deep down under the earth. But I am left in bitter grief, a widow in our home, and our son is still only a baby. Oh, doomed father, doomed mother, never will you be a blessing to him, Hector, or he to you, for you are dead. Even if he escapes from this miserable war, yet his portion shall be always labor and sorrow, for strangers will rob him of his lands. The day of orphanhood makes a child wholly friendless. He must always hang his head, his cheeks are slobbered with tears. He goes begging to his father's friends, and plucks one by the cloak, another by the shirt. If one has pity, he puts a cup to his mouth for a sip, wets the lips, but not the palate. The boy who has both father and mother slaps him and drives him away from the table with unkind words. "Just get out. Your father does not dine with us." Then the boy runs, crying, to his widowed mother. Yes, Astyanax, who once sat on his own father's knee and ate only marrow and richest fat of sheep, and when he felt sleepy and did not want to play any more, he slept on the bedstead with nurse's arms round him, with a soft bed under him, full and satisfied. But now he will have plenty to suffer since his father is gone. My Astyanax, as they all call him in this city, because you alone saved their gates and walls. And now you are in the enemy camp, far from your father and mother. And when the dogs have had enough, crawling worms will eat your body, naked, although there is nice soft linen in your house, made by your own women. But I will make a bonfire of the whole store. It is of no use to you, for your body will not lie out in that, but it will do you honor in the eyes of the people of Troy." She wept while she spoke, and the women lamented with her. Book 23. The Funeral Rites of Patroclus, and How the Games Were Held in His Honor. While the Trojans were mourning within their city, the Achaeans made their way to the ships beside the Hellespont. Most of them dispersed to their own vessels, but Achilles would not let the Myrmidons disperse until he had addressed them in these words. "Your horses have done good service today, my brave comrades, but we must not unyoke them yet.